Managing partner of EB5AN. Thank you for taking time to join us for today's video testimonial. Today we're going to be speaking with Deepak from India, a real EB5 investor in our Rocky River Rural EB5 loan project. And we'll be chatting with him about the process, what it was like hiring an immigration attorney, going through the source of funds process, and then researching potential EB5 investment projects, and then ultimately why he decided to select the Rocky River Rural EB5 project with Coulter. So Deepak, thank you for taking some time in the evening today to share your experience going through the EB5 process recently. To start, could you introduce yourself, share a little bit about your background and experience, and kind of what led you recently to pursue an EB5 project for you and your family?
Yeah, sure thing. Hello everyone, I'm Deepak, and Sam, thanks for having me here and look forward to chatting through my experience. I'm Deepak. I grew up in India. We currently live in California with my wife and kid. I think one of the first question is what led me to pursue the EB5. So we want to really talk through where we are coming from. So we have our work permit, which is H1B, and we also have I-140. But as you're familiar, the green card wait is long. And with this work permit, the travel is kind of restrictive, where you have to get stamping, which means there's a lot of restrictions. TLDR, we were looking for more certainty. We wanted to travel without restrictions and live freely. So EB5 stood out as the path which is very clear. So that's the reason why we pursued EB5 opportunity, so that we want to so that we can travel unrestrictedly in and outside US and live here.
Got it. And how, like, in addition to the travel, how did the kind of employment flexibility aspect of the investment also kind of factor in to your decision?
Yeah, that's a good one. With the current work permit, the H1B, you're tied to an employer. With the EB5, you're not really tied to an employer. So that was one of the major pluses as well.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Were there other visa options you considered other than EB5, or was EB5 kind of the main one that you focused on?
That's a good one. So we did really consider other options. So there is EB1A and there's other employment-based options. Again, end of the day, it is really subjective, like what really resonates and works for us. I felt that EB1A is subjective criteria, and you really have to spend a lot of time building profile, which means that there's a lot of time commitment, and the employment route also means that you have to temporarily leave the country. So with all of the options, we did a quick analysis, the pros, cons, and what's really a close fit for us, given the stage we are in. EB5 was a much clearer option we wanted to pursue. So that's the reason why we doubled down on EB5.
Okay, got it. And so once you had kind of completed that analysis and determined EB5 was the best fit, tell us what happened next. What was your experience like kind of starting the research process, looking for an immigration attorney who'd be able to help you through the source of funds process?
Yeah, so once we really figured out EB5 is the path we want to take, there were two kind of tracks. One is finding the right EB5 opportunity or the project, and other is finding the right immigration attorney. I'll focus on the immigration attorney pieces. I did a bunch of research. I also, whenever I talk to an RC, I also ask for referrals. So I ended up having roughly around 8 to 9 attorney referrals. So I narrowed down to maybe 5 attorneys, and I spoke with all 5 of them. So all of them are great. So it really depends on what you're looking for. It's really a combination of what's a reasonable fit. Some are more personal, some of them are standardized and rigorous, and most of them sat on the attorney board. So you need to do a bit of research, and I did talk to all of them. After talking to the 5 attorneys, I ended up with Joey Barnett because his profile and the way he worked resonated with my style. So I went with attorney.
Got it. And what would you say kind of differentiated Joey from the other 4 attorneys that you spoke with, and how were they kind of comparable in terms of pricing and delivery timing of promising to get your application done by?
Okay, so of the 5 I spoke, 3 of them were like a close call, but here are some things which I encourage people to look into it. You should really look for a good track record, not just not working on any of the casework, specifically EB5. The hundreds or thousands of cases they do, which means they have done it in and out, they would have come through all kinds of cases. So that's number 1, track record in EB5. And 2, something kind of someone who worked with the kind of projects you're interested. So it's really the regional center and the kind of ones you're done with. And 3, it's also about being on the advisory boards of EB5 advisory board. So you should really look into those 3 metrics. I looked into those 3 metrics. I think 2 or 3 of them are kind of really close. And then when you really talk to them, it's really more about their working style and your working style. Some of them are more, how do you say, personal, and they give more subjective, right? It's a lot of personal nuances about what personality clicks with them. So even if I'd gone with others, they were all great, but I really like Joey. So I really talked to this attorney, and I really felt it's more of a personality fit, in addition to having all those things I mentioned, the 3 criteria I mentioned. I broadly looked into each of those attorneys. So that's how I ended up picking the attorney I'm currently working with, and it's been a great experience so far.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So tell us a little bit about kind of what that experience was like with Joey. Like how was the exchange of documents, timing? Yeah, just kind of walk us through just generally what that source of funds documentation process looked like, and yeah, what suggestions you'd have for someone just getting started on that process.
Yeah. So when I spoke with the attorney and his team, so that was kind of an orientation call. So he's really talked through about what you really have to expect. And then it was like a clear email instructions about what to really expect. So really taking a step back, source of funds documentation is the one which is gonna really take a lot of time in getting all the documents. I had done some prep work, but despite that, I didn't really spend up a lot of those time to really getting the right documentation. So if you really think about source of funds, some of them are easier, like getting your bank statements and easier. But if you were to look at, like, I mean, before we even go there, what are some source of funds people expect? It's really all the documents which really show that you lawfully earned your source. I mean, lawfully earned the funds here, which means the bank statements, the pay stub, the tax returns, everything else to really bolster the claim is going to be helpful. And that's what you're trying to really assemble here. Some of them are really, the more older you get, maybe like the 7-year-old tax return or something else you need. That took a little bit of time, but for the most part, it's really about just keeping focus and just cranking through the work list of like getting each of the document. It's also an iterative exercise. So you have a checklist and you keep flowing through that checklist and just crossing off the items, like pay stubs, you got it, tax returns, you got it, right? So this lot of back and forth there's a lot of back and forth between you and your source of fund stream. So it took us roughly around 6-ish weeks to get to like 99% of the documents. So if you were to really give some advice, it's about start early, because there's a lot of documents you have to collect. The more sources you have, the more prep work you have to getting the right documentation. But I mean, if you really work with an attorney who has really done all of this, they really take you through it. It's not that it's ambiguous or anything. It's just that it takes time to get all those documentation in the right format. Your team is asked you to really get to them. Yeah.
Got it. Was there anything kind of surprising or unexpected during that process? Things that you didn't think you would need to provide, but that ended up having to be needed?
I think it's some of those like it's older pay stubs, older like 3 years. So if you really change jobs, you don't really have access to the old employee portal. So short answer, the bank statement is something you can pretty much get to on what's on you log into your bank, you just really get most of them. But some of those which is tied to your previous employer. So if you're no longer with the firms, then you really have to go to the portal and make some ad hoc requests. So that took me by surprise. But again, it's something you can easily work through. You just have to do an email outreach and they will get what you really need. But that's something which I wasn't hoping I needed, but then I ended up going that route, and it was a little bit of a surprise. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so quickly walk us through the timeline. So how long did it take you to kind of interview the 4 or 5 attorneys, hire one, and then go through the whole process and be ready to file your source of funds application?
Yeah. So I would really have like 2 to 3 week timeline to really find the right attorney fit. So it's really talking to the regional centers. They give a referrals. You also have to do some research, right? So you have to really do some prep work. The more prep you do, the compress you can really get. So I talked to the regional centers, got the referrals, then I did a bunch of screening. Like you can always just Google them and what do they do, their profile, how many applications have they filed, read about the law firms. A lot of them are easily available online. So that was like a 2 to 3 week exercise in trying to find the right one. You also have to block time with each of them to do it, like to get a feel like which kind of attorney vibes with our working style. So that's a good 3 week timeline. And the state source of funds, it's around, I mean, it could have been more compressed if you weren't traveling for work or for leisure. So that took around 6 weeks. I'm also including 1 or 2 week break. We were traveling for vacation. So it's roughly around 6 weeks. So you should really allocate somewhere between 2 months. Again, it took us 2 months, but again, it could be quicker if that's your fully focused. But that's like a give and take. That's a ballpark timeline applicable in our case. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so just to quickly summarize, what would be kind of the top 2 or 3 like short pieces of advice you'd have, for a new investor in your situation considering EB5 in terms of picking an attorney?
In terms of the top 2 or 3, so the number 1, do a lot of prep work, especially all the kinds of documents you can assemble. Your attorney is going to help you, but do a lot of prep work before. The sooner you really think through all those cases, the more, the faster you can turn around. So that's number 1. Number 2, finalize your attorney sooner. The only thing is, I wish I had done this source of funds sooner. That's the thing. People, I mean, don't really underestimate the level of effort required to get the source of funds documentation buttoned up. Start that sooner. That means you have to start your attorney sooner. So those are the 2 things. I think it was long-winded advice, but those are the 2 things I recommend for folks to really think about. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so shifting gears now, let's talk a little bit first about some of the regional center aspects of the investment, and then specifically different potential projects. So on the regional center side, walk us through kind of your thought process in terms of researching potential regional centers to select and potentially work with, as you started to explore possible projects.
Yeah, as part of, I mean, I talked about, right, there are 2 tracks. One is the attorney and the source of funds track. Other is finding the right project fit. So taking a step back, the first thing I was trying to do is, I searched a lot about the EB5 projects. Then there is 2 major broad ways. One is going by regional center and going by the direct route. I felt regional center route is the path of least friction, because as someone who has like a full-time career, you would rather go at regional center, which is very transparent and get you all those updates. So I preferred a regional center. So I spoke to 4 of them. So as you really start talking to every regional center, go through the projects they have, you start thinking about the pros cons of each regional center. So what are some of the things you need to think about it, right? So you should always look for a regional center which is a good track record, and also the varieties of project which is more closely aligned with your own background and situation circumstances. There I would really frame it as the rural versus urban. So especially coming from India, if you were to go via the urban or the HUA route, it's going to take a long time, and we wanted to prioritize a faster timeline for green card or conditional green card, so we went by the rural route. So taking a step back, you need to look for the track record. You need to look for the kind of project which resonates. In our case, it's the rural EB5 projects. So those are the 2 things. We started comparing different regional centers, and we narrow down the regional center. In addition, you also start noticing which regional center gives you more documentation, more transparent, more clearly communicates. It's really a series of factors, but those are really like the broad 2-3 conditions which really help us to really go with the one regional center. Yeah, in this case, it's EB5AN. Yeah.
And what would you say, one of the things you mentioned, the transparency and the documentation, what was something that was a little bit different in your experience with EB5AN versus some of the other regional centers as you were, looking at potential projects that were rural?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what really stood out to me, I think I did briefly mention, was really the comprehensiveness of each of those documentation in the packages, right? So when you're trying to really pitch a project across all the regional centers, people just share like a sample project, but then you have to ask them a bunch of questions. Whenever you ask a question, then only they'll share the document. So they don't really be forthcoming and share all the documents. But EB5AN, so whenever, first time I spoke with Ahmed and then I spoke with Sam. So it's really the comprehensiveness of each of the documents. So they just give you a link and it really has like every other documentation, the job creation methodology, all the guarantees, the financials, the approvals, right? So there is no like you have to ask for a document, it's already there. So that really stood out. So number one, it's really the comprehensiveness of it. Number two, it's also really understanding, right? So, this EB5 project itself is new to me. So it's really about the navigating the landscape. So it's really more about, hey, what's a better fit for us? Like helping the distinction between rural versus urban. All of this I realized through my conversation. And also so when I spoke with Ahmed, who's part of EB5AN, he really explained to me how to really think about capital stack. What are the various pros and cons? So that was a kind of education session. When I spoke with other regional centers, some of them had some sort of documentation, but not to this level of comprehensiveness. And two, they also didn't really, it was more of a sales exercise, them trying to lock me in rather than trying to educate me about the process. What are some gotchas you have to look for it, right? So those things stood out from all the regional centers. EB5AN stood out because it was very easy for me because first time navigating this whole this project and this investment prospect. So helping me understand the process, EB5AN stood out. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit about projects. So you mentioned you were really focused on rural versus urban. Why did you decide, to really focus on rural? Like, what was kind of the information that you saw that really said, no, I really want to pursue rural?
Yeah, I think it was through the 2022, the reforms from the Braden, where they started allocating a portion of the allocation for, I think 20% or something for the rural. So that's like a faster track. So that really motivated me because I've heard situations or scenarios where people invested in urban or HUA project and waited for a long time and it takes forever. So that's the reason why we were more keen on rural projects. So that's number one. Number one, end of the day, right? There are various things you can really optimize. It's investment, ROI, and timeline and whatnot. We wanted to really optimize the timeline, like what's the path to getting the green card faster and also keeping our money safe, right? Those are the two things we were trying to optimize for. So with this in mind, so we went with rural projects.
Got it. Okay, so within rural projects specifically, we have 4 or 5 different rural projects that have been open over the last 6-7 months. What in particular drew you to the Rocky River project as the right fit for your application?
Yeah. That's a good one. So if you really think so, I was just trying to reminisce how we really was trying to really brainstorm. So there are a plethora of rural projects you can really do it, like hotel construction and housing and whatnot. We normally were leaning towards housing project because it's kind of more straightforward. People need house and there is demographic which is changing. So why Rocky River? It's a combination of one. One is the solid economic fundamentals. I like that for those of you who aren't familiar, they have this Crestwind kind of brand of properties which really cater to active old communities. So I really liked them building housing for that targeted segment. So housing, people need housing, and then this is targeted towards a particular segment. So the economic fundamentals and the target audience they are tracking towards, and a couple of other things which stood out. The third was really about the developer. So if you really think about it, right? So they've done this format a couple of times. So this is like a proven and tested format. So you're trying to rinse and repeat the formula with a strong brand code. I did really go through that track record. So it's really a strong developer. Those are the three things why the Rocky River stood out in particular.
So talking a little bit about your first point there, the type of project, what were some of the other types of projects that you looked at that were rural, and kind of why did you feel more comfortable with residential housing?
I did really look into across the board the hotel construction project, like the luxury resort, the hotel construction across different regional center. Again, in my own opinion, so it's more of a what kind of things you really want to invest in, right? So some of those projects might be high ROI, so but also it's more cyclical. If you really take a step back and look into it, the travel is more discretionary, and there are ups and downs, ebbs and flows. And housing is normally tend to weather this downturns because end of the day people need a place to live. So keeping that in mind, we're always leaning towards housing or kind of those housing related projects. So that's the reason why we went Rocky Rivers versus others. It doesn't mean that others aren't great. It's just that they appeal to a different kind of investor. I'm sure there are great opportunities there. It's really more about what we're trying to keen on. So this is what we were favored towards. So our preference is towards this kind of particular segment. So we were leaning towards this segment. I was actually keen on other housing projects as well, but when we were really trying to really narrow down this one, Rocky River was the one which had the open slots. We were leaning towards Rocky River. Yeah, I would have, if I'd applied in Rocky River 1 or any other Twin Lakes, I would have gone for the same, like the Colder brand, but this one was open. So this particular segment is what we were keen on. And two, at the timing, right? That when we're trying to really invest, so they had spots, and we just timed that into Rocky River.
Got it. And you mentioned you did some research into Coulter specifically. What about Coulter, the developer of the Rocky River project, just was attractive for you in terms of the company that is ultimately responsible for repaying EB5 funds?
So we looked into the documents provided by EB5AN. So number one, it's Coulter's track record of doing similar large-scale projects. They have done a lot of projects. I think I don't have that exact list handy. So it's like 20-odd projects within a similar projects. Two, we went together the financials. So it's like a sound financials with a lot of projects under their scale. So it's really those two things which really, and also at the end of the day, right, the guarantee of the project is Coulter. So based on a combination of financial analysis and the track record of Coulter, we felt this is a compelling project to invest upon. So that's the reason why we went with Rocky River, which was backed by Coulter in terms of security.
Got it. Okay. And so once you had decided that Rocky River was going to be the project for your investment, tell us a little bit about what it was like working with the EB5AN team to get all the subscription documents completed, transfer funds to escrow, and have a smooth filing of your application.
So once we decided that, hey, Rocky River Fund 2 project is the one we are going forward with, it was actually very quick. So we reached out to EB5AN team to confirm the bank account. We wired the funds on a Friday. The team proactively got back with the wire confirmation on the Monday, along with the subscription document. So all of the paperwork was very seamless, and the team was very responsive and get through it. Now we are just working on getting the paperwork done and working on the I-5-60 submission. So short answer, it was very quick. The team was very transparent, and proactive communication really helped in getting that across the line.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So now that the application's been filed and all the work's been completed, what advice would you have for those interested in EB5, who are considering, let's say, looking for a comparable rural project, over the next couple of months?
I would encourage people to do a lot of homework. So you really have to focus on the fundamentals. When I mean fundamentals, you really have to ensure, go with a developer who has a good track record and ensure that there is adequate job cushion, and do a thorough review of the capital stack analysis, like where you really lie. So as long as you focus on fundamentals and also think about this, regardless of EB5, the economics of the project should really work out. If you were to really keep this in mind, pick a project. And lastly, go with a partner who has done this, as a good track record of doing successful EB5 projects in that particular space and segment you're looking towards, and who's also very transparent with all the documentation. The more comprehensive the documentation is, the lesser headache for you, because you don't have to really work on chasing people down. So that's my answer about how, that's my 2 cents about how people should really go about finding the next EB5 project, or whoever is considering investing in this one.
So one thing I want to talk a little bit more about that you just mentioned was the capital stack and how EB5 kind of fits into the project. Could you tell us a little more about kind of like what you mean by that, and what specifically was important for you when you were looking for a project in terms of EB5, being used as part of the project and, being critical, for project success?
Yeah. So trying to really make it very simple. So you need to really ensure the developer has some skin in the game. So you need to really ensure they have a stake in the game that is really reflected in what's the equity, what's that portion they really own. So that's number 1. And 2, also really think about where do you lie in the capital stack, and how is it really tied to that. It could be mortgage lien, or what is the guarantee, or is it the corporate guarantee? So we need to really think about that. So if you really look from those 2 lenses, there are a couple of projects which really stood out. At the end of the day, there is always limited trade-offs you really make. You can always really worry about too much ratios and all, but if you really take a step back and really go with it. So there were a couple of projects which really met this criteria, where the developer has enough stake in the game, even though in certain cases, this is really backed by that lien on the property. In certain cases, it's really more of a corporate guarantee. So that was really a close call. I would always go with the lien on the property, but in certain cases, very good, don't get a lien on the property. It's really more about the corporate guarantee. In the case of Rocky River Fund 2, it was really more about the corporate guarantee. So I really talked about how I did this analysis, right? The financial analysis and the track record. So it's a combination of those 2 I closely reviewed, and that it made me feel comfortable about, hey, this is something which is going to work with the risk appetite, and then we went forward with it.
And what about the guarantee, the repayment guarantee versus, let's say a lien on only one particular project? What was kind of the compare contrast in your mind, and what made you kind of more confident in the security of the repayment guarantee?
That's a good one. So the way to really, at least the way I really thought about this, is really more about end of the day, what is really backing this repayment guarantee, right? In this case, it's called really balance sheet. So they do have a long list of properties on their books. So it's just really not, even though it may not be a specific property, in this case, it's Rocky River Fund 2, it's really the entire, they have several properties on their balance sheet. It's really that which is really guaranteeing them. And if you really take a step back, most of these property developers tend to really, how do you say, honor most of the guarantees. That's what it's in my own personal opinion, because the moment they really default, it's going to impact their interest rates and how do they raise capital. So most of them tend to really, based on a combination of what I have really seen in the market and how this whole guarantee is structured, based on the what's on the balance sheet, I felt more comfortable for this project.
Got it. Got it. And I think one of the things we were talking about earlier in terms of the capital stack for the project, one thing I really like to kind of emphasize is just, does this project make economic sense without EB5? Like, is the developer willing to build this if no EB5 investment came in? And if the answer is yes, and it's profitable without EB5, and it's happening without any amount of EB5, then it's usually a better situation compared with a project, that really needs a certain amount of EB5 within a certain period of time in order for it to be feasible, at all, right?
I agree with that. I think that's some of the things I wasn't really talking about earlier. So does the economics of the project make sense? It's really more about, regardless of the EB5, if the economics is compelling, then yeah, it's definitely more compelling project. Yeah. Perfect.
All right. So in summary, or I guess before we go to the summary, did you get a chance to look at some of the prior testimonials from EB5AN investors before you decided on the Rocky River project? And if so, how was that helpful for you in making your decision to go with EB5AN, and particularly, one of the Coulter projects?
Yeah, so I didn't really watch the testimonial. It's on their website. I think it's really helpful to really listen to the experiences of how people navigated the whole thing. So some of those way, right, I talked about immigration attorney, I talked about how do I think. It's a lot of people sharing their experience where they really covered it. So that was really helpful, because that's the way I also really took a step back. Hey, these are the 5 things I have to do. And that's the way I structured like the 2 work streams I had in mind, and how I picked the regional center, how I picked the attorney, how I picked the project. I also even read about the Rocky River Fund 1 testimonial. So it's really, listening to those experiences made me at ease, because it's really people sharing their experiences, and also you get to learn from it. So short answer, it's really understanding people's journey and stories really helped me navigate the process.
Okay, great. All right, so final question. So, would you, having just gone through the entire process of selecting an attorney, going through source of funds, picking a project, and filing, would you recommend your immigration attorney and EB5AN to other similarly placed investors, and why?
Yes and yes. So I recommend the attorney because they were very proactive, and they were really a good partner in getting this source of funds documentation buttoned up. It's a lot of work, but they really made me at ease by really talking through why you need to do and what we're doing. So that's the reason I had a good experience working with my attorney, so I recommend the attorney team. I also recommend EB5AN because of their experience of investing in this Rocky River Fund 2 project. I think I did cover before. To summarize, I like the comprehensiveness of the documents. I like how proactive they are in communication, be it sharing the document or answering the questions. Lastly, I really like the projects and the structured and the compelling economics of it. So does the project make sense regardless of EB5? And the team really try to help you and partner in helping you pick the right project. I never felt they were trying to rush me into anything. It's really more of a partnership and trying to really navigate the journey. So they were really helpful. So I recommend EB5AN for this EB5 projects.
Great. Thank you very much, Deepak, for taking some time today to share your experience and feedback and thoughts. And yeah, I'm sure other similar investors will find this helpful as they explore EB5 and determine if it's a good fit for their family, and consider rural versus urban, and Rocky River versus some of the other projects open. So thank you again for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Sam, and have a great day.
Yep, you too.